This is a 2023 Infiniti QX50. Infiniti's swoopy, compact SUV without a sloping roof, a la the QX55, which was introduced in 2022. The second and current generation of this QX50 has been around since the 2019 model year. However, there have been incremental improvements to the QX50 since, not least of which is this car right here. It's a good example. It's the 2023 Infiniti QX50 Sport, and it's painted in graphite shadow. This Sport trim is brand new for 2023, and I'll show and tell you a little bit more about it in a little while. Also new for 2023 is something Infiniti calls Premium Care. That is up to 3 years of inspections and maintenance for free when you purchase or lease a brand new Infiniti, including this brand new QX50 Sport, which is the middle of 5 trims offered. Above the Pure and the Luxe, but beneath the Century and the Autograph. My name is Robin Warner, by the way, an experienced engineer and magazine editor. And my new trim for 2023 is this. It's called Untrimmed. I review all kinds of cars, from a $25,000 Ford Maverick to a $425,000 Rolls-Royce Cullinan. I'll happily jump into Honda Accords, BMW M3s, and Porsche 911 GT3s. And I have fun every time. Please subscribe and join me. The base price for a 2023 Infiniti QX50 Pure with front-wheel drive is $41,495. Going for a QX50 Sport with all-wheel drive raises that price to $51,695. And my test car did have illuminated kick plates and a welcoming light and cost $52,815. All right, let me pull over and show you around and inside this car in a bit more detail. It's been a few years since we first saw this latest Infiniti QX50 shape, and yet elements of it are brand new in this Sport trim. Let's take a closer look. The biggest and most obvious change for 2023 and the Sport trim is this gloss black front fascia, front grille that you see right here. There's also a bit of gloss black down here by the fog lights, but the same basic shape does still remain. We have these nice curves in the hood right here, these bulges lifting up, a couple other creases back here, these real sharp squint eye coming to a point headlamps right here, and this nice just like broad face that really shows as much width as it can. I think generally speaking, it's a very attractive front end. But there's something very interesting under this hood. Let's take a look at that. What you see is a transversely mounted turbocharged 2-liter engine. So the engine faces this way, goes across like this. Pretty typical. This is a front-wheel drive based SUV after all. All-wheel drive is optional. But VC turbo, that is variable compression turbo. This can choose between 8 and 14:1 compression ratios to change the dynamics and the behavior of this engine based on the conditions. That is novel and unique to Infiniti and very, very interesting. So when it gets time, I'm very curious to play around with that a little bit. Also, a couple other things right here. This is a nice and big intake box back here. Battery is tucked back here, and up in the corner up here is windshield washer fluid. Looking at the car in profile, you can see that that swoopy shape does kind of continue. Infiniti did a really good job to give short overhangs in front and in back. This is a fairly short vehicle with a fairly long wheelbase, and it proves out with those overhangs that you see here. More evidence that it's a Sport trim comes with this little black piece right here, the black window trim right here that has this nice little check mark to it almost, and even black roof rails up here. I generally think it's a good look, adds to the car. By the way, those 20-inch wheels, which we'll take a closer look at in a sec, are also part of the Sport trim. I'll go ahead and put the dimensions up on the screen right now so you can check those out, and let you know that I have plenty of more information in the description. A couple more details about the profile. I do like this character line that kind of starts from the crease of the hood here and then extends through the door handles all the way to the back, just above the tail lights. And I think of all the roof mounted spoilers I've seen, this is one of the nicer ones. Here's a closer look at those 20-inch wheels, mostly black, but you've got this polished metal inserts right here and here to give a nice bit of contrast and texture with the wheel. Generally speaking, I think it's a really nice wheel and adds to the general styling of the car. Looking at the car from the rear, we do have a couple more pieces of black trim right here, just above the Infiniti logo, as well as QX50S, and yes, this is the all-wheel drive version. And we do have dual exhaust tips, but we also have the cardinal sin of modern automobile manufacturers with fake exhaust tips. The real tips are just behind right there. So it's not the worst I've seen, certainly, but still unnecessary. Generally speaking, I do think that this is a nice shape, and I do like how it just kind of flows down. We've got this nice rake to the rear windshield here, and I think it's generally got nice creases and rounds to give a sporty and also kind of like wide shape. It's really genuinely a nice looking SUV, and one that provides a pretty darn decent amount of cargo space. On the Luxe and higher trims, you do get a motion activated liftgate, which means hands-free. Swing your legs right here. And that reveals 31 cubic feet of cargo space behind the second row. You do also have a charge port right there, a couple of hooks built in right there, and underneath the floor is a little bit of additional storage space right there. And if you don't need to carry too many people but need more space, easy to do. And with a couple pulls of a lever, you now have 64 cubic feet of cargo space, and you would have 65 if we did not have the panoramic moonroof. But hey, 64 is still a pretty good number, and I think this provides plenty of room to fit my bike. Let's find out. Oh yeah, no problem at all. Plenty of space, nice tall opening here, pretty darn wide as well, so that fit in real easily, and plenty of room to close the liftgate. All right, let's check out the second row. This is a 2-row crossover SUV, so space is pretty darn adequate, but there's something I wanted to show you. The seat farther away is in the most upright position, the seat back, and then the seat closer is in the most relaxed position. So that gives you a sense of how much variability you have in the seat back of the second row of the QX50, and it's adjusted right here. Now, my personal preference is second from the most upright, which is right there. Also, it's not just the seat back that's adjustable. You can also move the entire seat fore and aft with this big lever right here. And that shows you the difference between all the way forward and all the way back for the second row. And if you do that, that does give you some additional space behind the second row and lower down. I don't think this is the first thing people are looking for in their premium SUVs, but it's nice to have that much flexibility in the second row. The seat itself is reasonably high, so I have decent thigh support. Not great, but it's not bad. I do have a little bit of legroom here. I'd say maybe 3 inches, and my knees are bent a little bit more than ideal, but it's also not too bad. For shorter trips, I think I'd be totally fine. I am 5'11" or 181 centimeters tall, and I do have about 1 inch of headroom, so really not bad. And that's despite the fact that we have this nice huge piece of glass right here in the panoramic moonroof, which also does let in tons of natural light. It is a bit on the narrow side here, so going 3 wide would be a little tough, but as long as you don't have 3 passengers back here, you do get an armrest and cup holders and this little slot here. Lovely, lovely. Oh, and finally, you do have a standard and USB Type-C port right there to plug things in. It's a pretty sharp interior. You've got these nice like carbon fiber-esque looking bits of trim right here with this polished metal just below that. Because this is a sport trim, we do get Bose premium audio and semi-aniline leather seats, which are lovely. The seats themselves do also have a lot of adjustments, including a good amount of lumbar support, which is appreciated. You do have the typical controls on the door and 2-position seat memory as well. You also have this nice illuminated kick plate right here and a couple of controls to the left of the steering wheel. Lighting, this is steering assist right here. You can also adjust tilt and telescope. It is manually done right here. The steering wheel has this nice leather wrap, and it is a nice and thick rim with a decent amount of controls on either side, but it's actually fairly clean by today's standards, which I appreciate. We do have real actual gauges on either side of a small screen in the center that does have some adjustment, but we have 2 screens to make up the top of the center console, an 8-inch screen up top and a 7-inch screen down below. These are standard equipment on the QX50, as is wireless Apple CarPlay and wired Android Auto. We also have heated and ventilated seats for both the front passengers, as well as dual zone climate control. Beneath that, we have a also standard wireless phone charging pad, which is really nice, 2 more USB ports, and your cigarette lighter style port right there. Couple of cup holders, pretty standard Prindle, electric parking brake, drive mode adjust, and some more storage down low. Looking up, we have this frameless auto dimming rear view mirror right here, and some controls for lighting and the panoramic moonroof. I'll quickly turn the car on and show you that it is a powered privacy panel. Lovely. Here is that center screen in the instrument cluster lit up, along with the 2 center console touchscreens right here. The 8-inch one is currently displaying a bunch of cameras. You have lots of options for cameras. And then beneath that, this screen does most of the work, has a lot of options in it. And one that I think is worth pointing out is your Infiniti drive mode selector, because yes, you have 4 different drive modes. Adjusted down here, they are personal, sport, standard, and eco. Or if you prefer, personal, sport, standard, and eco. And for personal, you can adjust the following things. So no, we don't have adjustable shock absorbers or anything like that, but this is on the higher end of your pretty typical adjustments with drive modes. So pretty happy about that. I will probably spend most of my time in the standard driving mode, but we will definitely touch on sport, which means now is a good time to get back to the drive. Okay, I mentioned it just a minute ago when I popped the hood in this car. The one and only engine offered in the QX50 is the VC Turbo, or variable compression turbo engine. It is a single engine that can change between 8-to-1 and 14-to-1 compression ratio. That is a big swing, and the only mass-produced engine on the market, at least that I know about, that does that. It's a 2-liter inline 4-cylinder engine that makes 268 horsepower at 5,600 RPM and 280 pound-feet of torque between 1,600 and 4,800 RPM. That is a 3,200 RPM range of making full torque, 280 pound-feet. Pretty impressive. Now, I said it's a 2-liter, and it is, but it's actually changeable between a 1,970cc and 1,997cc engine. The displacement changes along with the compression ratio. That is kind of crazy to think about, that the engine displacement has a range. In addition to that, it does have the more usual variable valve timing, and pretty common among this class of compact SUV, it does ask for premium fuel, which I would expect it would run fine on unleaded, but probably not make quite as much as 268 horsepower. Attached to this engine is a continuously variable transmission, or CVT. Despite that, we do have paddles to increase and decrease ratios. There are no gears, but there are fixed ratios that the Xtronic, which is what Infiniti calls its transmission, can go between. So you can have what feels like a standard automatic transmission, but there are no gears. And in all but the Autograph trim, you choose between front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. Autograph all-wheel drive is standard. Going all-wheel drive otherwise costs $2,000. So from an engineering point of view, this is a very cool engine. it's very interesting to see that Nissan, which owns Infiniti, came up with a way to make an engine that can actually adjust the compression ratio. And practically speaking, it works pretty well. You know, the fact that you can have a peak torque of over 3,000 RPM, that is definitely above average, even though a lot of modern turbo engines do offer a range of peak torque. And it is on the higher side of 2-liter engines when it comes to power. But it's not a huge difference between what other 2-liter engines can do with fixed compression ratio. The fact that we have as much adjustment that we do with the valve train does allow engineers to mimic different compression ratios in a lot of ways, and as a result, give the engine inherently high compression ratio and reduce it as needed by opening the intake valves at the bottom part of compression. So in a practical sense, this is not the simplest solution to come up with a way to have that much variability in the way the engine operates, but there is something that is still quite cool about it. And when you hit the throttle, you get pretty darn good pull. Now, real quick, we heard what sounded like a shift. That was not a shift, that was a CVT going from one fixed ratio to another. As CVTs go, this one works pretty well. But there is still some weird surginess at times where you can feel the thing is hunting for ratios and it doesn't feel quite 100% engaged. And in those times, I do miss real gears and a torque converter with a lockable clutch. And again, speaking generally, I do find this to be really interesting technology, but from a pure practical feel point of view, I still think I'm happier with Porsche's 2-liter turbo, as the base Macan gets 261 horsepower and 290 pound-feet of torque, and that's without variable compression. But since I did bring up the Porsche, this definitely beats it for fuel economy. You get 22 miles to the gallon in the city, 28 on the highway, 25 combined. Now that's with the all-wheel drive setup. If you go front-wheel drive, that does improve slightly. I'll go ahead and put those numbers on the screen for you to check out. Fuel economy is incredibly important, of course, especially when you've got some novel technology thrown in under the hood. But it's not nearly as much fun as accelerating, and of course I had to test it. Of course I did. Let me show you that now. All right, everybody, time for an acceleration test. I do have the Infiniti QX50 in sport mode, and I have the vehicle dynamics control off, but I also have all-wheel drive, so I'm not expecting much wheel spin. So yeah, all right, let's see how this variable compression turbo does. All right, coming to a complete stop. Bit of brake torque, just under 2,000 RPM. Here we go. Oh, interesting noise. Pretty good shift. Fake shift. And yeah, oh wow, okay, that is better than I expected. Now, we went through several gears there. We actually went through 0 gears. This is a continuously variable transmission, and it went through them quickly, it accelerated quickly, I had good strong pull throughout, and that was an interesting engine noise as well. Yeah, I am pleasantly surprised with that. Good acceleration. Of course, most of your time will not be spent at Watt. You'll just be cruising around, getting work done, living life, right? And in those circumstances, how does this car ride? How does it feel? Well, I have to say the seats that Infiniti provides are very comfortable, and I do appreciate the large amounts of lumbar adjustment you get, and I found it interesting that you also had quite a lot of adjustability for the second row seats as well. And don't forget, this is middle of the road in terms of luxury. You can definitely get more creature comforts in the QX50 if you go Century or Autograph. And generally speaking, I find the ride quite pleasant. I think it's a good compromise between ride and handling. It leans a little bit more towards the ride side. If you really try to hustle around a corner, you are going to get some body lean, not quite as much body control as others, but it's a nice soft ride, goes over bumps well, handles heaves in the pavement with no problem, generally quite comfortable. And that's true on roads like this or on the interstate. I tested it there as well. Let me show you that. All right, everybody, time for a quick stint on the interstate. I do have the car back in standard driving mode. Vehicle dynamics control is back on, of course. And I am quite curious to try out some of these safety systems. We do have Pro Pilot Assist, in the Infiniti QX60, and that includes lane centering and a bunch of other stuff. I'll go ahead and put the list up for you to check out right now, but I'm also quite curious about general road noise, wind noise, and comfort. So yeah, let's give it a go. Okay, cruise control is on, set to about 75 miles an hour to go with traffic. I do have Pro Pilot Assist on as well. We got the subtle curve, so I'll go ahead and take my hands off the wheel. And yep, the car is following the curve nicely. Getting a couple little jerks here, and it's pretty quick to let me know, hey, it doesn't like my hands not being on the wheel. But it's pretty good at lane centering, pretty good at curve following. You know, I'd say slightly better than average, this system, so that's good. And then obviously adaptive cruise control will help with distance and the rest. I do want to take a moment to show you what I see on the instrument cluster. So right in the center is you, and it shows you where you are in relation to other vehicles. And as you can see, as you approach slower traffic, that shows up on the cluster as well and lets you know how close you're getting to them. It shows you what the car sees. And as you approach, I can feel it hitting the brakes right now, and you can see the speedometer decreasing as we do it. So yeah, it's always interesting to me to see what the car sees and what it wants to show you what it sees. I always find that fascinating. More generally speaking, we're spinning right around 2,300 RPM as we go 75 miles an hour. And at that engine speed, the engine is a little bit louder than ideal. We're getting just a little bit more buzz than I would expect, considering that this is the premium class car. And in that vein, wind and road noise is also not as good as the best premium compact sport utility vehicles out there, but it's still quite competitive, and I do find the seats quite comfortable, lots of lumbar support, and a lot of controls, and a lot of screens and information to see. So generally speaking, I think it's a really good highway cruiser, just not quite as quiet as the best compact SUVs out there. So what do we have in this 2023 Infiniti QX50? Well, especially this sport trim, I think they did a really good job applying nice little black elements to the body to give it just like a little bit more of a sinister, kind of cool look, if I'm honest. And that complements an already really nice and swoopy shape. I think this is a very pretty SUV, and I think the sport trim might be the prettiest one they make. From a form point of view, this is very attractive and very compelling. And practically speaking, again, it's very comfortable, and you got a lot of nice standard features in here. Standard wireless smartphone charger is a really nice touch, as is wireless Apple CarPlay. So those types of things are really appealing to me. And there's a lot of space in here as well. You saw how easily it swallowed my road bike as an example. Furthermore, you get good power from this engine and decent fuel economy on top of that. So there's a lot of strengths here. But from an enthusiast point of view, the overall feel from driving and the overall connectedness of all the driving elements put together isn't quite as good as some of the other cars out there. So this is the kind of car for people that really do value strong styling and good looks, because man, this definitely has it, and appreciate the practicality that comes with it. I'm Robin Warner, thank you for watching. And if you like this video, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up. Doing so helps me out quite a lot, and I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you're interested in a car like this and maybe, just maybe, have a little bit more money to spend, you should definitely check out the Porsche Macan T. I got a chance to review that not long ago and found it had a lot of strengths as well. And from there, I reviewed a whole bunch of stuff. Something's gonna pop up on the screen next to me. Hopefully it's something you're interested in, and if you watch it, I definitely hope you like it. Okay, goodbye for now.